When men are weak, society is weak.
Where do I go? Who do I turn to? And he says to me, he's like, I'm empty.
We don't gather together in tribes like we've done since the dawn of time.
What are you seeing that makes the difference?
A man's greatest currency is his self-esteem.
In life, the only way to lose is to quit.
Until you can learn to trust yourself, nothing is going to start making sense.
I will either find a way or I will make one. Gentlemen, welcome to the Formidable Family Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. You are going to love today's episode. I have an awesome conversation with Adam Allred, and he has lots of cool stories that I know are going to be super impactful for you like they were for me. We talk about business. We talk about marriage and when marriages fail. We talk about failure. We talk about the one secret ingredient to really, truly succeeding and how no success really is attainable without this one thing. And he tells it in such an epic story. So you're gonna love this podcast. Dive in, enjoy, be the man. Adam, brother, been looking forward to this for weeks, man. So excited to have this conversation. So why don't you start off just giving us a background? Tell the audience about who you are and what makes your soul sing.
Greg, thanks for having me. Been excited for this as well. So I'm just, I'm a military brat. Grew up with a dad in the military, originally from Utah. When I went on a LDS mission, which is kind of the rite of passage in the Mormon church, if you're brought up that way. So I went on an LDS mission, came back, went to Utah.
Where'd you go? Did you go international?
No, which was a huge disappointment. I mean, everybody loves the mission they go to, but I was like, I grew up with a dad in the military. I grew up all over the world. So I assumed that when I was getting called to go on a mission, I'd go somewhere foreign because all my family did. Yeah, I went to California. And so I was pretty disappointed.
Hey, that's pretty foreign, bro. California's pretty foreign.
It is. It's this whole different world. But at the same time, I had a buddy that was going to North Dakota. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, California sounds way better than North Dakota. So I gotta have some perspective and some context. And it turned out obviously to be awesome. But when I was in California knocking doors at Riverside area, I started running into these kids that were knocking doors from Utah for like pest control companies and stuff. And these kids are like, man, I'm making 20 grand this summer. And I couldn't believe those numbers were just insane. I mean, you could work 3.5 months and make 20 grand. And this is 20 something years ago. So 20 grand stretched a lot further back then than it did now. So it was a huge sum of money. And I got back, started going to Weber State in Ogden, Utah, where my grandpa was a professor of English. And I had out of state tuition I had to pay. I had to, figure out how to get through school. I had no money. I got roped in or recruited into doing this crazy door-to-door sales world that I'd ran into when I was on this LDS mission. So I started knocking doors in the summertime.
Did you go into that kind of maybe a little bit of desperation? You're like, gosh, I really need this.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's something people are like, sign me up for that, right? That's how I want to spend my summer.
I didn't have a lot of options. Like I had to pay for my schooling if I was going to get it done. And so that seemed like I was waiting tables at the time, at Chili's, and I was making some okay money for a college kid, but
I was starving. Like probably at the same amount of time, I was probably living in my truck, literally about the same time, and just waiting tables, like trying to survive.
And waiting tables is great. I enjoyed it, but it's not going to pay for your schooling. You're not going to be able to get through it without a lot of debt. So no, I got recruited out, started knocking doors. I did it took me 7 years to get an English degree because I started making so much money in the summertime that I was really starting to check out of like the formal education and going and being a cog in the machine and working my life away for somebody else. And I was like, man, I'm 24 years old in college, and I'm making almost $200,000 in a single summertime. And you're like, this is absolutely insane. And so when I got done with that, and it was a whole process. I mean, it's really hard to do summer sales work. And there's a bunch of times I almost quit. Like it's miserable. Like you're just going through the hardest day of your life on repeat, like Groundhog's Day. But when I was getting done with college, and we were just jamming on this a little bit before the show, but when I was getting done with college, I realized, I had like, kind of two options. I either had to figure out something that I was passionate about, that I knew I would love to do every day for the rest of my life, or I had to find something that I could make some money at, because most of the men that I saw in my life that were further down the road were not living like their best life at work. They were going into the mill, working their life away so they could pay these bills. And most of them you could tell it was soul draining. They just hated it. And so I was like, man, I don't want to be a cog in the machine. And I'm not throwing any stones. There's nobility in going out and taking care of your family and having a career. But I was like, I need to find something that makes me passionate about what I'm doing or gets me for financial freedom. And the only thing I knew how to do was knock doors. Started up companies. I've had a bunch of exits. That's what I've done for the last 20 something years is just build
Same
companies
industry?
with, yeah.
Yeah, you start them up and then exit.
Yeah, we start them up. We have a lot that we keep, but we exit. We're all self-financed, so we do exits here and there, so we can finance growth in more strategic locations. So I've got pest control branches now, kind of dotted all over the country. A garbage company out in Lincoln. All of these built primarily off of door-to-door sales. We've had a bunch of branches that we've sold off. We do some marketing for different companies as well, and we hire hundreds of guys every year to go out and knock doors and train them and get them ready to go. So it's a whole thing, man, and it's kinda like my bread and butter. But you were asking me kinda earlier what gets me fired up, and that has, like, I did that to make money, but seeing the transformation of how much this door-to-door sales experience, myself included, starting with myself, how much it transformed me into a much better person. Like, it gave me this framework, and it gave me this sense of confidence and sense of self-worth, like, what was I financially worth? I could go out and make this kind of money, a lot of confidence. To see that transformation take place for these guys that we hire now, like, that's what I'm passionate about. I see them, and we have some girls, but it's mostly young men that come into this space, and, they go through 3.5 months of hell in between semesters, during the summertime, and they come out if they don't quit and go home, if they don't just lay down, they come out the other side of that, ready to run through walls. I mean, these guys are top-notch dudes after a 3.5 month stint in door-to-door sales, and I had personally experienced that. So, this thing that I was doing to make money for financial freedom has now become something that I'm intensely passionate about, and I'm going on for a minute on this to try and get this all out so it makes sense. But when I was in that, the door-to-door sales space, I saw how valuable this experience was for guys. I also saw, as the years have passed, more and more young men come into this place, being recruited into our company or others like it, and really not having any kind of framework for what it's like to go
Mhm.
out and do hard things, how to
Yep.
level up, how to orient yourself towards suffering, how to, like, have a purpose and goals and drive. They want to.
Yeah.
Their hearts are willing, but nobody's taught them anything, and so they show up just completely, like, unprepared for door-to-door sales, and in so many ways,
Yep.
unprepared for life.
For life. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I see it all the time. Yeah.
All the time, and it's a pandemic that's growing that I've
Yep.
observed, at least from my
Same.
anecdotal space I'm in the door-to-door sales. I've just seen, these kids they're good kids, but they just have not been taught well, they haven't been coached well, they don't have the right mindset, and so this thing that we do with door-to-door sales really helps to shape a lot of that, but I felt like a need to share this, with a broader audience. I'm like, "This has gotta be, a huge problem for a lot of guys out there." So I got up a camera. My buddy put my buddy that does my videography for my door-to-door sales companies. He just posted up a camera in our little podcast room, and I started filming my musings. And I'm like, man, this feels really pretentious, and it feels really like I'm not an expert of anything except being a dude and knowing how to go out and knock doors and build some companies that way. Like, that's all I know. And here I am sharing my opinions on things that are much broader than that. And within, like, my 5th video, I had, like, 2 million views. Like, I had no followers or anything, but all of a sudden, it was just, like, flew off the rails, and I had originally kinda conceived of doing it to write a book. I was like, "I wanna write a book that I can hand to the general audience, not just door-to-door sales guys, but to men anywhere and say, 'Here's a way to, like, have a better framework than what you have right now. Like, this stuff actually works. These principles, these truths in here, like, if you start applying them, your life will start to make a little bit more sense.'" So I wanted to write a book, and a buddy of mine that was, like, in the social media space, he was a big influencer. He's like, "You gotta build up a social media following, and then you can market a book to them." And so I was like, "Okay, that makes sense. I'll start making some reels and see if I can, kind of build up a little bit of a following so I could share this book with people." But within, like, those first few reels, like, within the first few weeks of doing it, um, I had guys that were hitting me up on social media that were like, "Dude, I didn't think I was gonna get through today, and your message really helped me just kinda, like, face up to it." And now, I got a little bit more,
Yeah.
like, a little more fight in me because of what you said, and I would get tons of messages like that, and then I would get messages from, like, single moms that were like, "Hey, I want my son to talk to you, like,
Yep.
we don't have anybody in our home that can teach this stuff. This seems like it makes sense, it resonates with me." And all these different people from different walks of life saying something about how the message meant something to them. And so immediately, like, the book I did just kinda went away, and I was like, "This is bigger." Like, I still intend to write a book, but I was like, "This is bigger and more important than what I realized it was gonna be when I started it." And so that's kinda the whole
Yeah,
that's a
because you
lot. I
can.
just kinda threw it out all out there.
That's perfect. No, because if you strike a chord, if you hit something that matters that people are chewing on or struggling with, you can have immediate impact. And I love that story. We're like, hey, you want to have big impact, but man, you can share a message that today helps a guy get through the day, right? To face his challenges right now. Man, I love that.
It's super humbling, man, when you hear that stuff, you're like I mean, because again, I'm very aware of who I am. I'm just some dude. I don't think of myself more highly than I am. I recognize all my faults and foibles and stuff like that, and I've had like everybody, hard times in life, but Um, this is something that I think is so lacking in society today, right now, that I've become more and more aware of on this social media journey is just how isolated men have become and how we don't gather together in tribes like we've done since the dawn of time to share things at work. Like, hey, this works. This is how you treat a woman. This is how you go out into the workforce and you conquer. Like, this is how you like get yourself in physical shape or emotional shape or spiritual shape or whatever. We don't have those kinds of things for so many men. I mean, there was a poll that was done not too long ago where the men were asked how many close friends they had, and the most common answer was zero. Like, guys have been isolated, they've been conditioned to be like doormats and, yes men, checking off boxes of responsibility that somebody else has handed to them. They're absolutely miserable. They don't they're not good husbands, they're not good fathers, they're not good men because they're not good men. They don't even know what it means to be a man because they don't have other good men around them. And
Exactly.
so this whole thing is like to me, this is like the most important work that can be done right now. Because when men are weak, society is weak. When men are lost, society is lost. And when men are strong, you see everything else kind of start to fall into place. And I think this is fundamentally where it starts is us men owning where we are at, being honest about it, and then rallying together in groups and tribes and starting to level up and starting to act differently and change this world that we're in right now.
Yeah, we have to. I had a conversation with a gentleman recently, and he's been struggling again, isolation. Very few friends. Really can't. Good relationship with his dad and whatever, but can't turn to his dad. His dad's not there for that, and it's like, where do I go? Who do I turn to? And he says to me, he's like, I'm empty. And he said something I thought was really insightful. He's like, I need my wife to help fill me up. And I'm like, whoa, wives aren't for that. It's the other way around. Like, men need to be filled so they can really support their wives. And so again, it's one of the things that you were talking about. It's like we need men to help build each other up, call each other out, fill each other up so we can be stronger, better, more capable, and our wives can really lean on us when they need it.
So I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, and I think this is a philosophy that is largely it's been attacked and stamped out. Um, I I revere women. I hold women as sacred. I had a woman that gave birth to me, that carried me for 9 months and raised me with love. Like I have a mother that I absolutely adore. My wife that I'm married to now is the best human being I know on the planet. I have 2 daughters. I hope to have more. I absolutely love women. So I say this with that in context. It's not good women that make good men. It's good men that make good men.
Yep.
That's how it
Yep.
works. And we say that wrong all the time. And when you put the purpose on the woman, when a man, and I've seen this so often, we have this generation, I call it the generation of lost boys, what we're talking about, where guys are just growing up without masculine frameworks. And they're getting the worst kind of programming from every institution in society. They're being told
Agreed.
the worst messaging, like be weak, be soft, be submissive, be tolerant, be basically nice. They're raised to be nice guys because most of them are raised by women predominantly. They roll into this world and they think if I'm just nice, just like when I was nice to my mom or my school teachers, world will be nice back to me. And it's not how they
Exactly.
work. It's not how it works.
At
It's
all.
it's it never works that way. And so this is like a huge issue where if we want men to be strong again and level up, we have got to get them around other good men that can teach this stuff and share this stuff. And men can call each other out on bullshit so that we are prepared when we come into a relationship with a woman, not for her to be our purpose. She should never be our purpose, ever. Like she is like the most sacred relationship we have, but she's still not your primary purpose. Your purpose as a man, for every man, it's the same. It's to be the best version of yourself, the best, most vibrant, expansive, powerful, kicking ass version of yourself. That is every Period. That is every man's primary purpose in life. That's what God made you to be. He made you to be a man first. And it's not for selfish reasons. It's because if you are a good man first, now you can be a good husband. You're not going to a
Exactly.
woman like trying to make her your purpose. That's not fair to her. She's first of all not going to be attracted to that. And then it puts an onus of all of your emotional, needs, all of your spiritual needs, all of your physical,
Her.
everything on this woman, and it
Yep.
completely disrupts a healthy relationship. When I come
Exactly.
home, I don't come to my wife needing things from her. I come home empowered, like, baby, what do you need? I'm here for you. And
Yep.
yes, she backs me up and she takes care of me. But if I can keep her healthy and safe and protected and in her feminine energy, when I come home, that puts me all back together. Like I
Mhm.
come home from a hard day at work and my wife is there and the home smells good and she's happy and she's at peace and the kids are doing well. I'm like, man, all right, dude, everything
This
I
is
went through today
this is the
all makes
dream.
sense. It
Yep.
all makes sense. Like I've got this taken care of. I'm not going to her because she's my purpose and I need her to fill me up in some way to give me purpose. I've already got that. I need that
Exactly.
feminine energy to complete me now in a way that's like I can't do for myself.
Perfect. Oh, I like how you articulated that. It's that completing, and it brings so much joy and so much bliss, and she'll gladly, compliment you in what you need and fill you in the sense that like it's the dream. Like you come home, you're describing, it's like, man, I come home and like this is what I dreamt about. And for me personally, that's what I dreamt about when I was homeless on my own, like 16, 17. I dreamt about having an amazing marriage, house full of kids. Like this is what I was living for. And you're
I
spot on,
think it's
brother, for what
really
you said.
tragic. Oh, sorry, keep going. Sorry.
Well, just like I think the absolute best thing that any of us can do for God or for mankind is to be the very best version of ourselves. To really level up and lean in to be the best.
That's it. That's because everything else will fall into place. When you make it's this whole idea of inputs and outputs. When you focus on the inputs and you recognize that you are your most important product, your character, this avatar that you're controlling in this game called life, it's more important than a career. It's even more important than a family, and family is everything. So again, I'm not saying this is to dismiss family because there's nothing more, that I love more in this life spending time with than my family. But when you realize that your primary purpose is to level up, and this is something like a video game, like we come down here, we face adversity, we have bosses we have to go through. That boss can look like a divorce, that boss can look like a career change, that boss can look like we have these huge trials and challenges that we have to go through in life. When you recognize that your job is to learn from these, that all this is happening for you, not to you, so that you can level
Mhm.
up and you can become better. When you orient yourself that way towards life, everything starts to make a lot more sense. And then everything that you want externally, all these things that you think are cool, having the boat, the house, the wife, the high paying career, whatever that is, vacations, whatever it is that you think are like, goals that you want to get to, those all come naturally because you're focused on what really matters. You're focused on the root issue, which is yourself. When you expand and become more powerful, all of these doors start to open up for all these other things that you want, and that you recognize that those aren't even the purpose either. Those are just like mile markers, like, oh cool, I got this house. Oh cool, I got $1 million in my bank account. Oh cool, I got a family. Like those are things I want, but they're not even the purpose. The purpose is
Right.
to take this character that you have and make it the best thing you possibly can make it in this amount of time that we have.
And all those things you're mentioning are just like results. And
Results,
like I
that's the
always
best
say,
way
like
to say it,
results
yeah.
don't lie, baby.
It's just
Results do
results,
not
yeah.
lie.
Exactly.
Love that. Okay, so I got a combination question. It kind of goes back, like, what made you different when you started knocking doors? Because you could have gone out the first summer and been like, "This sucks, I'm out," but you actually succeeded, and then you kept going. Like,
Mhm.
what was it? What mindset? What habits? Like, what made it different? So you kept climbing, and that's kind of tied into a related question of like, where can men start? Like, what are the things that actually matter? Like these subtle differences of because we see people succeed and we see people fail all the time. It's everywhere. All you got to do is open your eyes. Um, Ironically, most of us are walking blind. But what is it, brother? What are you seeing that makes the difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll share just a story. This is probably the most powerful lesson that I probably ever learned in my entire life. Was my first summer door to door sales. Um, Probably the most important lesson I've ever learned. And I went out, you know, bright-eyed and optimistic, and I got recruited out of Utah, and I wasn't unfamiliar for traveling. I've lived all over the place, but I got recruited to go sell security systems my first summer in Detroit. And I had never been to the hood ever in my life. Like, I'd never really seen that except in movies. And,
Detroit's the place to go.
Detroit,
Holy
man, and
cow.
we went up to Flint, and we went there's
Wow.
some pretty rough places knocking doors, you know, and, um, they had on at the time, the pay scale for the company that I worked for, they said if you serviced 100 security counts in a summertime, you'd make 40 grand. And now I was working roughly 100 days, so I was like, "Man, that's 1 a day. I'm pretty confident, I can communicate relatively well. I've got 2 years of Mormon door knocking under my belt, so I know how to knock some doors," you know, I was like without any context, I had some kinda, like, optimism that I would sell well at this. I didn't have any money, got in my buddy's car, recruited him to come with me, got in my buddy's car, we drove out to, Detroit. There was, like, 20-something other sales reps, I didn't know any of them until I got out there, and, we started doing this crazy thing and knocking doors, and the first day that I went out, I knocked something like 11 hours straight and didn't make a sale, and, the next day I went out, second day, same thing, didn't make a sale, didn't even get close. And this isn't unusual, by the way. This is very common, right? Like you have a learning curve and then there's a price to pay for your education. In the case of door-to-door sales, this is the price. You work a lot of hours and you don't sell a lot at first for most guys.
Lots and lots of reps.
Lots and lots of no's, lots and lots of reps. But you know, by the end of my third day of not making a sell, I was like, man, I've never worked harder at anything in my entire life than this for the last 3 days. And I have nothing to show for it. And so then I was reading this book by Collins and LaPierre about Gandhi at the time, and Gandhi, how he'd fasted something like 30 days to get the Hindus and the Muslims to stop killing each other. And I was like, man, if Gandhi can fast to get them to not stop killing each other, I can fast to make a sale. So I'm gonna show God how much faith I have in Him, you know, to help me be able to do this thing that I need to make money for school. I've got to be. I don't have a lot of options, so I have to make this work. So I was like, I'm gonna fast until I get a sale. So I go out the fourth day and I go all day and I don't make a sale. And I'm not eating or drinking anything. Like I believed in not drinking either. I wouldn't do it this way again if I was doing
Right.
it over again. But I
Like,
was like, no
bro.
food or water. This is my faith. Knocking like hard, running door to door. You know, by the end of the day, I'm completely exhausted. I get up the next morning. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this again. By skip the van lunch, so the van would come pick us up for lunch. I skipped that, and I just kept knocking, and by, like, 6 o'clock that next night, I still didn't have a sale, so I was something like 40 hours into this fast with no food or water, and it was at the point where I couldn't really run anymore. I was so, like, fatigued and calorie deficit and
It's
dehydrated, and I'm
empty.
knocking doors, and I can't get my brain to work, you know, so I'm not even giving a rational door pitch. I just sound like a weirdo. Then people are just like, it's getting worse. Like, I'm not getting closer to a sale. I'm
Right.
getting further and further away from one. And so, like, I was in this really, like, bad part of town, and I was like, "Man, there's this Little Caesars down on the corner that I had been working around, and I was like, "I have to get some food. If I'm gonna even think about going and continuing, I've gotta get something to eat." And so I do this huge walk of shame at, like, 6 o'clock at night down to this Little Caesars, where I didn't fast until I made a sale. Like, I'm having this kind of faith crisis, like, "Man, I don't know who I am." I have this confidence crisis, identity crisis, and I go to this Little Caesars Pizza on the corner, and there's nowhere to sit inside, so you just kinda slide a credit card through this bulletproof glass thing, and then they get you out a hot and ready. In this case, it was a warm 2-liter Sprite because their fridge was broken, and so I take this and I go sit down on the corner, and literally there's like broken glass and you use contraceptives and shell casings and stuff. I mean, I'm like in a pretty low spot, you know, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I think I was really contemplating quitting. Like I was like, this isn't working, man. I'm 4.5 days into this, no sales. I'm absolutely miserable. I haven't even gotten close, and I'm eating this pizza, and I'm eating, you know, drinking this Sprite, and now I'm feeling sick because this is like the worst stuff you can put into an empty tank, you know, and I'm just like, man, I'm feeling like I'm gonna throw up now. And I'm having you know, this wrestle kind of with me and God where everything was stripped away, my confidence, my self-esteem, my optimism, uh, everything was. I was just sitting, it was just kind of me and in this in this crazy part of the world and God kind of talking about what do I do now? And I can't I don't even remember what all transpired in that moment when I was sitting there, because I was thinking I was gonna quit. I was like, "This isn't gonna work." And, I don't know what clicked, but something happened there where I was like, "You know what? I'm not gonna quit." That's really the question. The question is just whether I'm a quitter or not. Nothing else matters. It's not about paying school for school. It's not about making a bunch of sales. It's not about anything else that I thought this was about. This is about what type of character do I want to have for myself? How do I want to identify? And I got zeroed down to that because everything else was stripped away, and I just said, "Hey, I'm not gonna quit." That's what I know. I got up out of that sacred little arena that I was in that moment, and I walked out of that and said, "Man, whatever happens this summer, I'm just not gonna quit," because to me, it's more important that that becomes my characteristic than making money or paying for school or whatever else that is. I'm not gonna do that, and so started knocking doors. It was like 7 o'clock at night by the time I started knocking doors again, and I was like, "Whatever you if I don't make any money this summer, I'm not gonna quit. If I come home broke and whatever else and I have to wait tables at Chili's forever, I'm not gonna quit." Uh, and that night I sold 2 accounts, and the next day I sold 2 accounts, and the next day I sold 2 accounts, the next day I sold 3 accounts, the next day I sold 3 accounts, and within 2 weeks, I was the number 1 sales rep in the entire company out of, like, 300 sales reps, and I was a rookie, had no experience, and people were calling me like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Like, the owners none of these guys knew who I was. I was just some, you know, worker bee out there, and they were like, "What are you doing, man? You're on the leaderboard, you're crushing," and I'm like, "Man, I don't know. I know what it is now." I got to a point where I wasn't going to quit, and as soon as I knew that I wasn't gonna quit, then success was on the other side of that awareness, and it was such a painful place to get to. It was really, like, the hardest point, in my life up to that point in my life, were those 4.5, 5 days in Detroit where I had to learn that characteristic about myself. But it changed complete trajectory for my life, like, everything changed, and I look back on that young guy in Detroit, and I get emotional, but I'm like, man, I'm so glad that kid didn't quit. Like, I'm so proud of that kid. And it's like a different person. It's not even me. I feel like I'm talking about somebody else, and I'm like, but that kid didn't quit. And then when there was other hard times, and life is full of hard times, and these moments where you get to these crossroads where you want to quit, life is so hard you want to quit. But I didn't quit because I didn't quit that time. And so then I didn't quit this time. And then I didn't quit this time.
It
And
builds
and
and it
and you just
stacks.
look back on that and you see how all of this has led to a place where you're like, "Man, none of this would be real if I'd quit ever once along the way." And so that was the most important lesson I've ever learned in my life is that you don't quit because things are hard. You keep going. You don't lay down. You work at it. You put in everything you have, and things will start to make sense. It will start to work out. But I think that's the catalyst for success for anybody out there that I know that I admire and want to be more like is they've learned that they don't quit. They keep going. They get
Because
back up.
that literally is the difference between winning and losing. It's just not quitting. Like figuring like I'm not quitting. I will not give up. Well, at that point, yeah, it's really cool. I was I was like 21 or 22 years old, and I pulled over to the side of the road really close to where you live right now, and I just had this boom aha moment of like in life, the only way to lose is to quit. I literally wrote it down in my little notebook. I pulled over the side and wrote that down. I'm like, that's it. That's it. You don't lose as long as you don't quit. So, man, I love hearing you say that because that's this framework. Like, so now I found this ancient quote. I think it's by Hannibal, who marched over the Alps with war elephants.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
the
insane.
guy was crazy. And he said, I will either find a way or I will make one. And I embrace that as my life motto. I will either find a way or I will make one. But I got that same kind of gritty, no, I'm not quitting. I'm gonna figure out how to make this work. And I think you're right. I think you nailed that, brother. Thanks for sharing that story because that's so often gonna give us at least the foundation upon which to build because of course it requires skill. We have to figure out how to do things well. Because I can grind, you know this already. We can grind and work all day long and not get results because I'm doing the wrong thing or doing it in the wrong way. But the first piece is this absolute commitment to not give up.
You nailed it, man, and I love that quote. I'm gonna have to internalize that. I've got all these mantras. I have my kids repeat mantras. I repeat myself
Same,
every morning.
same.
Um, you
Yeah,
were your final part of that question when we were talking about at the beginning of that, before I went on that long story, sorry. Uh, you were asking how do other men, or what can other men do to kind of put themselves in a place to succeed? And I think that's what you were asking
yep.
essentially.
Uh,
And it starts with that. A man's greatest currency is his self-esteem, his confidence, right? Like it's having confidence that makes a man successful at the things that he does in life. And you have to pay a price for that confidence. Like there's a lot of work that goes into building up confidence. It's not something you can just kind of imagine, hey, I'm a confident person. Confidence comes um, from validation, that you do things that are hard. And what I tell guys, like, where do you start? The first thing that you start with as a man, if you want to start organizing your life, is you start keeping commitments to yourself. You cannot have self-respect if you don't keep commitments to yourself. And we so often don't keep commitments to ourselves consciously or subconsciously. And then we realize why we're not where we want to be at. Where like we don't have the confidence to do things. We don't have the self-respect to do things. We don't like ourselves. Like nothing in our life is making sense. Well, you can't have a relationship with somebody else that doesn't keep commitments to you. If somebody lies to you, they say they're going to do something, they never follow through on it. What type of relationship do you have with them? Well, you just don't trust them. And so as a man, until you can learn to trust yourself, nothing is going to start making sense. And so it starts with making sure that you keep commitments to yourself. So if you say you're going to do something, then you have to can do it. You
yes.
said it. You have to do it. Now I don't care whether it's go to the gym, wake up 30 minutes earlier, whether it's like, hey, I promised my wife when I came home I was going to do this. Whatever you said you were going to do, you have to do it. Now that doesn't mean you have to agree to everything. If you're not going to do it, don't say you're going to do it. Or if you
I
don't think
know,
you're going to do it,
man.
don't
Yes.
say it. Like just own that. You don't have to do everything. But if you say you're going to do it, even if you say it internally in your head, especially if you say it internally in your head, man, oh, I've got to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Do it. That's where it starts. And be very careful about the commitments that you make to yourself so that you don't set yourself up to be in a position where you don't trust yourself.
Yeah,
And then
you're
the other thing
constantly
that I just
lying to
tell guys
yourself.
is, what's that?
And you're constantly lying to yourself.
Always.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can't build any healthy like framework for your life if you can't trust yourself to keep commitments to yourself. So
Yes.
start small. Just make sure you don't say in your head you're going to do something unless you plan on doing it. And then the other thing that I tell guys, this is much broader, is like, look, everybody in life has the exact same currency. It's time and energy. Like those are the two currencies. Now there's other currencies that add on to that. You gather resources, money, property, things that you can use to leverage to create more things. But really fundamentally, everybody has 24 hours in a day. Everybody does. And that's what everybody starts with. And the difference between you and somebody who's successful is not about what cards you got dealt to start this life off with or
Yeah.
whatever else. It's how do you spend that currency? Where are you spending your time? Because that will make all the difference in the world. If you start to learn how to spend your currency, your time, and your energy wisely, you will start to have your life kick ass. It's just automatically how it's going to happen. It's not like this whole secret sauce. Now, of course, there's so many strategies and things to do and how to level up and where to start, where do you put your time and energy. That stuff will all start to make sense. You start working towards it. But when you recognize, like, I've got this finite amount of currency every single day, how am I spending it? Well, if you're sitting on your butt watching Netflix, that's not going to get your life where you want it to be. You got
Exactly.
to define what is it I'm trying to accomplish. And now I have something I can spend towards that. So if I want to be in business, I want to build a business. Okay. I got to start spending time and currency, my time and energy on this. And you'll start to figure it out. I start surrounding myself by other guys that have done it, who've spent their time, their currency wisely. I start to pick up some ideas. Oh, that's how they're doing that. That's when they get up in the morning. That's what they do first thing in the morning. Okay.
Yes.
They're going to the gym. They're working out. They're keeping themselves in shape. Okay, now they're putting this much time, calling people. They're on the phone making calls. They do 4 hours a day. Okay, that's how they're spending their currency. Maybe I'll start doing that as well. Maybe I'm going to start off with 2 hours of currency, and I'm going to keep the commitments I make to myself. Okay, cool. And oh, that didn't really work that well. Okay, I'm going to pivot. And I'm going to do this strategy now because it's all about falling forward. There's no like just perfect trajectory up. You go up and down and up and down. But those downs are where you really learn. It's in the moments where you what we would label as losing or failing, those are the moments that you learn the most. And I try to tell guys this all the time. When you win, it's great. It feels awesome. But winning pays you one time. It pays you with this sense of success, and you're, man, this feels great. It's first time I made $1 million, I had $1.1 million hit my bank account when I sold my first company. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I never even thought I'd ever be a millionaire, and like now this whole thing has actually happened. I got $1.1 million in my bank account. That money goes so fast. It was gone. Like, it was awesome. It felt great. But what that money represented really was all the hits and what we would say losses or failures, the stumbling, the tripping, the getting back up for a year and a half that my business partner and I built this company. That was the real value, because those
Yes.
lessons that were failures, where we screwed up, we didn't get that right, we had to change this, we had to do those lessons pay me forever. They pay me forever. Those are things that I've learned from. They've shaped my character. They've made me into a better person. And so when we recognize that, the winnings are great, but those are not the point. Really, kind of the point is to fail, because that's where you learn. Like, when
Yeah.
it's not really failing. I'm using the word failure so that we can kind of wrap our minds around it. Like, but it's not failing. When you suck at something, you fall down, you run your head into a wall or whatever that looks like. That's where you really start to learn, and that's where you really start to develop character. And then when you make some money, that money is important only to the extent that it reflects what you learned. Like, that's what it's just like a scorecard. It's like, man, okay, I learned, you know, enough that I made $1.1 million. That's freaking awesome, man. Now I'm going to go try and learn how to make $10 million, and I'm going to try and learn how to make $100 million, whatever it is. I'm going to keep banging my head against the wall and trying to learn some stuff. If somebody inherits a bunch of money, or if they win the lottery or something like that, you have no respect for that as another person. I'm like, cool, good for you. That's awesome that you have resources, but it doesn't reflect anything. It was just handed to you. But I've got a buddy of mine. He's from Ogden. He was actually homeless on the streets in Seattle about the same time, same age you were, man. Like, he went through a really rough upbringing, and his life has been really tough in a lot of ways. That guy, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now because of how he's executed and how he's leveled up. When that guy talks, man, I'm listening to that guy.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God,
Exactly.
because that money represents this all of these failures and hits and life lessons and learning that took place. That's what it represents. So now when that guy speaks, I'm like, this guy is saying some important stuff. And so I think that's just really, you got to recognize that when you're, as a man, you keep commitments to yourself, and then you go into this world recognizing that life is happening for you, not to you. And as long as you don't quit, like you said, you can't lose, because the only way you really lose is to quit. It's not to fail. Failing is not losing. Failing is learning. That's what failing is. It's only when you quit that you lose. And so you just keep going, you keep learning, pick up a little bit more here, execute a little bit better here, and suddenly, dude, all this stuff starts to work. And you're like, man, I'm kicking ass at life, kind of. You start to be like, this is all kind of making sense. Sorry,
You're
man, I
right.
went on a
Right.
long one.
I love what you're saying is, and as you're telling this story in this framework, I was thinking, what have you really earned? Like, really, truly earned? The money's fantastic, but what have you earned? Well, it's character. It's
Character.
knowledge, it's skills, it's how to solve problems. It's how to get up when you get knocked down so many times. Like, that's what you've earned. And as you were describing that so well, I'm like, that's it. You earned the things that are so much more valuable than the money. The money's fantastic, but you could lose the money and make it again because you earned the ability to do it.
That's
Like,
why it's
that's
always, you are the most important product, not the business, not the relationship, it's you. What kind of character are you developing? And Alex Hormozy, you listen to him much? I was listening to him talk on a podcast one time, and he said, he has a bunch of buddies that have a lot of money, and he'll have these conversations with them, and they're like terrified that something could happen in the economy or whatever else, and they'll lose all their money, and he's like, I'm not scared at all. And he's because I know that I know how to make money. Like, I could just go back and do it again. I already know. I've learned. I've put in the work, and I've taken the hits, and I've gotten back up. So now, like, this money is cool, but it could come and go. It doesn't matter, because this character that I have developed is
exactly.
what's valuable. That's
Yes.
the resource. That's what matters. Everything else is just an appendage or an auxiliary to that, or a reinforcement or a consequence or a result of this character that I have developed. And so that's why it's all about inputs, guys. It's not about outputs. It's about, what are you putting into yourself to develop? What are you listening to? What are you reading? What kind of programming you're feeding yourself with? You know, What are you doing to go to the gym and get yourself healthy? What are you doing to orient yourself in a way spiritually to the creator, to the truth? Like these different things. There's so many different aspects of masculinity where you start working on the inputs, little things here and there, little things in here. I'm going to change this behavior about myself. I'm going to get up 30 minutes earlier. I'm going to get to the gym at this time. I'm going to, you know, read my scriptures. I'm going to listen to these podcasts. I'm going to, go to this like level up group or join this community. And you start just making these inputs and then everything else starts to show up. It just naturally
Exactly.
manifests. It just
It can't
comes.
not.
It
It
can't not
can't
because it's
not,
the
man.
consequence of of good living, you know?
Exactly. And you get up in gritty, whether you feel like it or not, and you do the things that bring the good results. I got to tell a story. I know you'll appreciate this. Um, my family and I, we wanted to go to the very top of Norway in the middle of winter, right? So where the sun doesn't rise, right? Like you literally went a whole week up there. You didn't see the sun. The day got lighter, but there was never sunshine.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
are 225 miles north of the Arctic Circle. And we were doing these polar plunges. We just love it. They have these floating saunas. So you jump in the ocean, then you get in the sauna. It's amazing. It's paradise. Like this, everything's frozen. It's unreal. It was so cool. So I go down the sauna. I was the first one down there. My family was coming down after. And there's this gigantic Viking of a man standing there butt naked. It's like, well, this dude's for real. And I was like, okay. I was like, hey man, just out of curiosity, I'm like, do you jump in the water first or do you get in the sauna and then jump in the water? And he's like, I always get in the water first. Make sure I'm not a little bee. I'm like, okay, yes. And he says, I want to tell you something. And that he hit me so powerful. I think it applies to everything you're saying, and it's so important for all of us. He says, when you get in the water, he says, do not get out because of the panic. You get out when you decide to get out. It's going to hurt. Your body will panic, but you don't get out because of the panic. You get out when you decide to get out. Right. And it's that same kind of mindset. Like, no, I get up and I do the things that I know will create the results. And if I need to put in more repetitions, I put in more repetitions. And if I get up and I don't feel like going to gym, I don't care. No, nobody asked. I didn't ask. Last night I said I was going to go to the gym. So I get up and I go to the gym. Right. And then I don't know, it's probably the same for you, me. If I don't feel like going to the gym after I'm there 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I feel good.
Yeah,
I'm in it. I'm
yeah.
going. But it's following through on that commitment you made to yourself to stay with it. And even little things like the snooze button. I mean, most guys using the snooze button, the very first action you do of the day is break a commitment to yourself.
Yeah, oh, man, that's so good. That's so good.
So, hey, let me ask a question. Let's shift gears a little bit.
By the way, I love that story. I gotta get out there
It,
sometime and do
oh,
exactly
bro,
that.
it is
That's
one of
like
the coolest places on the planet. You go to the very
that's my
top
love language, bro. That
and
stuff is right up my alley.
we took the kids out on sled dogs and just on these dogs that were just running as fast as they can through the snow. And it was heaven, absolute heaven up there. It's amazing.
I have to do that, man. You just sold me like
Yeah, it
hardcore.
was
I'm like, I'm in.
yeah, it was so cool. And then as a family, we spent the next 7 months just backpacking all across Europe and Turkey and Egypt. Like
Bro, you are living the
it
dream,
it
man.
was
That is
awesome.
exactly like that I'm very passionate about that idea. Take my kids to travel, my family to
Yeah.
travel and see
There's
things. And
there's nothing, there's no replacement for taking your kids to go see some of the coolest people and the coolest things on the planet.
yeah, yeah.
You do the coolest documentaries, the best books. You got nothing compares to them standing there, smelling it, touching it, feeling it, seeing it with their own eyes. Like,
I
okay,
I just got back. I read this book, fantastic book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, and highly recommend it if you're a father of daughters. It's so powerful. My oldest daughter, I went through a divorce 6 years ago ish, and it was hardest on my oldest daughter. She was the one that was aware of it enough,
right?
and I've seen her kind of really struggle with some things, and it's hard to determine whether that came from the divorce or it's just the natural, coming of age and becoming a teenager and going through girl and going through puberty and going to school and the complications. But she's had a really rough time on some things. But I took her with me on a trip to Brazil for a couple of weeks last year. And we lived in the Amazon. Well, we were in the Amazon for like a week and we were in Rio and it was so cool to see how she just blossomed in that
Yeah,
space, how much we
exactly.
connected, but her to be a part of I know she just she's got this swagger now that she's been to
Yeah.
Brazil, and she tells her friends and like and what she did, these hard things and these cool things. She'd climbing up, in the jungle, climbing up vines and like learn how to
Yeah.
survive and fishing for piranha and doing all these other things that she got to be a part of. Um, so it just an exclamation point on what you're saying and how that's something I'm really passionate about is creating those types of memories, especially for your kids.
Exactly. I think that's one of the best things we can do is gather experiences and memories, which goes along perfectly what you and I have been saying. It's like we're going out and we're gathering this human capital of character and skill and experience and failing and falling down and getting back up. And as we're raising kids, we build this capital of experiences and memories with them. So just like your story with your daughter, I mean, I can literally see her just like, I I did that. That was amazing. And if we can do that as often as humanly possible with our kids, just give them as many experiences as we literally possibly can, then by the time they leave our homes, like they have this scaffolding to build on now,
Yeah.
this framework that gives them such an advantage in life. And you go live with the Muslim people, and we've done that in multiple countries. You can't make some racist prejudice statement to my kids. They're like, Muslims are like that, and they're like, nope, they're
Yeah.
not, because we lived among them, and we
Yeah.
lived among the Hindus and the Buddhists. And, we've been in these countries and those places, and among the richest and the poorest, and everywhere in between. And you're like, you can't pull crap over on my kids, and you offer them something like that's challenging. They're like, I've done insanely hard stuff, right? And it builds that character and grit. We took them a year ago and we went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And to see my teenagers come down after summiting, hardest thing they've ever done in their lives by far, they're just like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I can do it. It's awesome. It's
My
such a
wife
cool
and I
thing.
went to the top of Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, with my company, with my door-to-door sales guys, bucket list trip, and that was the hardest thing she probably had ever done physically, really kind of a spiritual experience. I went up to the I went up to the top of the mountain, kinda thinking I'd have a spiritual experience, like, I wanted to go see the face of God. Moses,
Yeah.
I was joking around
Yep.
with people like, "Hey, when I come back down from Kilimanjaro, I might have tablets
Be
in my
white.
hands." I might be bright, like, I might have some commandments for y'all to follow. Like, I was but I was joking, but I was kinda serious, like, I wanted to have a spiritual experience. It's a really tough climb, and that last night when we left at, like, midnight, you're going up in the freezing cold and uh, it's no oxygen. It's hard to explain how that affects your body when you're at those elevations if you're not used to it. And, um, but I went up there with this expectation that I would see the face of God, uh, and and I did, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I We went up there with these guides. And I remember it's freezing cold, like your water is frozen, like you're just it's absolutely, miserable. Like, and you're going up in the middle of the night so you can get up to the lookout point to watch the sunrise, and then you finish the rest of the trek up to the top of to the summit to Kilimanjaro. Um, we had these guys around us, our guy, the guides, these Tanzanian guys, and they hovered over us like they were angels, man. They made sure we didn't step too far over here. They made sure that like they carried hot tea for us and they carried
Exactly.
glucose for us and they had oxygen tanks for us. And I'm bundled up in the best gear I could buy in the US to be warm. My wife is too. And there was a guy next to us that walked with me and my wife the entire way who had old church shoes on with holes in them that he was climbing. I
Man.
had high-tech boots on that kept my feet relatively warm and they still got cold. This guy had a beat up jacket with holes in it and he hovered over us. There was no like I'm trying to get paid or anything. It was because that was his character. And when we got to the top and then we had to make that final stretch, my wife wasn't in a position to do that on her own anymore. She couldn't. The altitude was too high for her. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't carry her because I could only take 5 steps without having to stop and
Mhm.
catch my breath. Like I've never experienced. I'm in good physical condition. I've done Ironman. I've done Lotus. I keep myself in good shape. I'd never experienced like that without oxygen at that level. And these guys, they 3 of them were around my wife and me, and they picked her up and carried her, literally carried her to the summit. And, I realized that I was seeing the face of God in our porters and in our guides. Like, I was looking at the best humans that I have probably ever come in contact with collectively. These guys that were so committed to making sure that we were safe and that we were able to accomplish what we set out to accomplish. And most of them were Muslim. So to your point, like, you just learn this stuff. Like, it's like, you can't tell me Muslims are all this way or whatever. Those guys carried my wife to the top. Those guys, like, were such badasses, and I still keep in touch with a lot of them, man. We it was a powerful experience, but the spiritual experience was that I saw the face of God in the
Hear that?
Tanzanians that
Yeah.
were out there that carried us to the top and hovered
Same.
over us and
Yeah.
protected us and sang to us and kept us motivated
Yeah.
and, like,
And they're
and
like
inspired
dancing
us.
and playing and joking and laughing, and we're just barely holding on for dear life.
Skin of our teeth, and these guys were
Yeah.
just, like, there for
They're
us the whole way.
amazing.
It was a really powerful moment for me.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's shift gear. I wanna ask a question that I think is insanely important. What are over the last 20 years, what are some things you did wrong that you're like, man, wouldn't do that again? Although now you learn the lessons, but maybe sharing it with other people so that we can learn from each other. What are some things that maybe you wish you'd done differently, or you would do differently had the chance to do it again?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, like, and that's a good thing. Things you look back on, you're like, man, yeah, I don't believe in shame at all anymore, but I believe that it is good to have a certain degree of regret a little bit. People say don't live with regrets, but I'm like, no, regret, at least to me, the way I orient it is like I could have done better and I should have done better. Like that's what it means to me. It's not that I'm dwelling on that. I don't believe in shaming myself,
Same.
like because we're learning. I think shame is evil. I don't allow any room in shame in my life or in my kid's life or my wife's life. We don't do shame on any level. But regret is something like physical pain. It tells you something. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like I burned my hand on the stove. I'm not going to do that next time. And I kind of feel like that's how regret is. And maybe there's a better word for that.
I agree. What I like to say is where there's pain, there's power, right? And so you and I are the same. It's like, no, there's a pain point there. That pain means there's power,
Good.
and
Yeah, I
and
love
that's a
that.
good kind of pain.
That's a good kind of pain. And so it maybe regret's not the right word for other people, but for me, I have a lot of things that I regret. There's a lot of things I look back on my life and I'm like, man, I could have done a lot better. And I don't fault myself because I know I'm learning and I didn't know everything that I needed to know. And you have to have grace for yourself. I would say the most important thing out of the last 20 years of my life is that I wish that I had been better at was in my first marriage. I wish that I had been better at my first marriage. And um, in many respects, I was a really good husband. Um, I've always strived to be the best father. That being a father is my favorite thing on the planet. Like, there's nothing that I enjoy more than being with my kids and raising them, and they raise me. We think we raise the kids, the kids raise
Mhm.
us. Um, but in that marriage, um, she came from a pretty rough kind of emotional place in a lot of ways, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know how to manage that well, and so I became really reactive to her criticisms and her dissatisfaction with me and in a lot of ways abuse, like the abuse that she gave. I became really reactive. I didn't manage that well, and I didn't understand what boundaries were, and I didn't know how to because I've been conditioned by all of society. So again, I have grace with myself, but I look back on this is fundamentally something so important for me to learn. I had been conditioned by every aspect of society that I was engaged with to be harmless in a lot of ways and to be a doormat and to accept abuse and to be an emotional punching bag because I thought that's what you did as men. You just kind of took it on the chin and if I had been able to if I understood what I knew now, then maybe we would have never got down that rabbit hole. If I'd known how to bring her to the table, if I'd known how to regulate my emotions well, if I'd known how to hold boundaries and have consequences, because accountability is what saves relationships. It's not warm, fuzzy feelings. It's having accountability built into your relationship where you're accountable to each other, you're accountable to yourself.
Yes.
It saves marriages, it builds marriages, and you can't have a healthy marriage relationship without accountability. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to hold accountability for her. I didn't know how to hold accountability for myself in a lot of ways. And so it's a lot to get into, and it's hard to package it into just a simple answer. But going through the 8.5 years of that marriage, which was just absolutely horrific, like it was never good. It was always bad. It was easy for me to blame her because she was the one that was coming at me all the time with her dissatisfaction. And so for much of the marriage, I was blaming her. I'm like, man, she's just treating me so poorly. But I recognized that I was not managing it well. And, um, and that I had a lot to learn. And I try to share that now on some of the posts and stuff that I do on social media, some of these life lessons I got out of that because now I wouldn't change anything. I am super grateful for her. She gave me 3 beautiful kids. She gave me so much to learn from. Like, there's I have it's a very complex thing. She was also very abusive to me physically and emotionally. This is this whole thing, and like, um, so it's this whole mixed thing. But I got out of that marriage. She instigated it. She pushed for it. I would have stayed in it probably forever and just kept going through the motions, and just because that's what you do as a man. She pushed for it at the end. I got on board with it, and, uh, and so I don't look back and regret, like, wishing that there were different results now, but I do wish I'd learned lessons better then, and I'd executed better, and I took those lessons into my marriage now, the marriage I'm in now, and it is night and day difference. Like, you can have healthy marriages. You can have great, vibrant relationships with your spouse. They can be your best friend. You can wanna spend more time with them than you wanna spend with anybody else. That's a reality that can be the case, but, um, there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of learning and character development. If you want to be in a really healthy relationship with a healthy woman, 1, you have to be a really healthy man, because a healthy woman
Yes.
isn't gonna be attracted to an unhealthy man. And so many of us go around with so little self-awareness thinking that we're entitled or deserve a good relationship or this and that, but we really haven't done the soul work on ourselves to say, "Hey, am I the type of person that somebody else should want to be married to?" Like, am I the type of person that is worthy of a healthy relationship in the sense that I've built my character up and I've learned and I've peeled back the layers of self-deception and peeled back the layers of bullshit and really learned who I am. And now I can go into this relationship with somebody else in a position to make it work really, really
Yep.
well.
Yes. Man, like it's so powerful and often difficult to articulate. An extraordinary marriage requires the man and the woman to both be strong and be the man to be fully masculine and the woman to be fully feminine. And for her to use that beautiful feminine energy to refine him and call him out and help him rise. And for him and in that strength to be there for her and set the boundaries and have the accountability. And so this beautiful dance we have of helping each other rise and refine and receiving some of the difficulty, especially with women. Women are like the ocean, right? There's storms of emotion. There's waves and wind and sometimes tsunamis. And like men have to be this lighthouse that can handle the storms and the changes in emotion, but not the emotional punching bag.
Yeah.
Right? This is this distinction of man, you articulate it so well. It's like we have to have that strength, but you're not there to just tolerate it and just take it endlessly. There's this beautiful place for both to really rise together. And when we figure out how to work with each other, man, marriage is magic.
When you can get to the point where you know yourself enough and you love yourself enough that you are more concerned again about your character, you're more concerned about orienting yourself towards the truth, however painful that is for your ego. When you're in that place, that's kind of the starting point. There's a story that I heard on a podcast years ago where this guy, and I've shared this before because it's just it encapsulates so much of what we're talking about right now, how important this topic is and how much I learned. I listened to this and was so like just hit the nail on the head for kind of what I'd gone through in my first marriage. So there was this couples group, and this guy's on the podcast, and he's telling about how they were in this couples group, his wife and these other couples, and one of the couples was going through a divorce, and everybody in the group of friends knew that this woman was an absolute tyrannical beast to the husband. Like, she criticized him, she nagged at him, she rolled her eyes at him, she never treated him with respect. And eventually this marriage was melting down, and everybody knew why. Um, and it was easy to blame her, right? It was easy to blame her because on the external stuff, they could see how toxic her behavior was to him, and he looked like the victim, and she looked like the aggressor. So this couple goes through a divorce, and then this girl, the woman, stays in the friend group, and she ends up getting remarried. And everybody in this group of friends, like, oh man, what's she going to do to this guy? It's going to be the same thing. So she gets married, they go on a honeymoon, and if I remember the story correctly, within like a week of them being home, she starts treating this guy the same way she treated her previous husband. They get into this altercation, and she starts unloading this criticism and disrespect on him. And this guy doesn't engage with it. He's like, okay. He separates and he goes upstairs. And so she's downstairs pacing. They've been married for 2 weeks now. She's downstairs pacing the tsunami, the storm, whatever else is going on. And eventually she comes upstairs, and this guy is packing his bags. He's packing up all of his stuff. And she goes, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, hey, I'm sorry. I totally misunderstood this. I should have had a better grasp of the situation. This isn't going to work. I'm not going to be in a relationship with somebody that disrespects me. I won't do it. Like, I have too much self-respect to allow somebody else to disrespect me, even somebody that I'm married to. So I'm sorry, this is my fault. I'm just not going to stay in a relationship like this. And she's panicking. This is coming into her second divorce after 2 weeks. So she's begging him to stay. Please don't leave. Like, we can work through this. This was, just a hiccup or whatever. He eventually, in this conversation, he agrees to stay. He's like, okay, we'll give this one more shot. But if this ever happens again, I'm going to leave. And this guy who's on the podcast telling the story, he's like, that couple has been married for 22 years and they're super happy together. And so you say, well, accountability sounds like being a parent, or it sounds like being controlling, or it sounds like manipulations or threats. My question is, did that guy do better by his wife by holding boundaries and accountability, or would he have served her better by being an emotional punching bag? And the answer is obvious. He held boundaries. He was a man that required
Exactly.
respect, and that was better for her. Now she's in a marriage where she's happy. They've been married for 22 years, and it makes sense. And so you look back, and it's like easy to point the finger at the woman initially, like in the first divorce, like on the surface level, because she was so overt about her disrespect and stuff. And I'm not justifying it at all. But that man had a responsibility to be a man first, and he wasn't.
Hold
And
the
so that
boundary.
I
Yes.
would put the onus of the responsibility of that relationship on the men, because as men, we have a sacred duty to lead. Our women are these nuclear reactors of emotion that funnel so much life and energy into relationships and kids, but it has to be managed well. I kind of feel like it's like a nuclear reactor. If you're Homer Simpson and they're pressing the wrong buttons and pulling the wrong levers, you don't want to, you're going to have a Chernobyl-like experience in your marriage, right? And you can blame the woman all
Exactly.
day long because it's obvious she's the one melting down, but you're the one not managing it very well. You're the one that's not see, authority and leadership in a relationship and partnership in anything comes from competency. It doesn't come from
Yes.
gender. It comes from competency. Authority comes from competency. And that's why men have to be men first, so that you are competent, so that you can step into a relationship with a woman and know how to manage that with her. Because if you don't know how to manage that, women are too powerful. They will destroy you. They will burn everything down. And it'll be easy to blame the woman, but it's not the woman's fault. It's the man's fault initially, because he wasn't managing the situation well enough. And so that's the lesson, I guess I would say, that I wish that I had known better in my first marriage. I was the Homer Simpson in there pressing the wrong buttons and pulling the wrong levers at the wrong time. I didn't know how to manage this. And because of that, it created a horrific relationship. And I'm not justifying her behavior. She shouldn't have done what she should did. Everybody has to take accountability. I'm not alleviating women and saying, you don't have any responsibility, respectful to man. No, you need to control yourself. Everybody does. But let's be honest, relationships, if we as men believe that we have the divine birthright to lead, which I believe that, then we cannot blame somebody else for anything. You have to own that. If you're the leader, the buck stops with you. And that was just an example from that podcast story that I shared with you, where that man knew how to lead. He knew who he was, he knew what respect looked like, and he knew what he wanted out of a relationship, and he was able to implement that without being condemning to her or criticizing or engaging in some big fight. He was able to hold boundaries. He was able to have a communication about that. And he was able to set proper expectations for the relationship, which invited the woman to trust him because he was competent. So she no longer had to do the Chernobyl meltdowns anymore because she's like, this man is competent. Okay.
Exactly.
I don't have to come at him with disrespect anymore. I don't have to act like this anymore. One, there's immediate consequences if I do, but now I can trust this guy with my emotions, with my future, with my family because the man's competent.
Yes. And I love how you said it's because of his own self-respect that he then um, requires respect. Like people treat us the way we train them to treat us. And when we have more self-respect, then it's easy to earn respect and earn the authority. I love talking about this. Is earning authority with our wives and with our kids. Earning real authority as the king in our kingdoms, right? Taking full ownership and responsibility for everything that happens in my kingdom and earning real authority by being the caliber of man that when you walk in the room and you ask for something, they gladly respond. Gladly respond. You can gently ask your children to do something. You can even gently correct because you've earned the authority to do so. You know,
Absolutely.
we don't have to yell anymore. We don't have to be tyrants. We don't have to threaten. The completely ineffective dad lectures can be done away forever. Because like you show up as the man. When you come into your family as the man, like you've been saying this whole time, everything else falls into place and works well.
And it's so contrary to what, again, kind of full circle back to where we started, to what most men are getting in terms of their programming. They're told the worst kind of advice. Men believe, too many men, lost boys, I would say, they believe that they can be nice enough to the world, nice enough to a woman, that they're now entitled to niceness back. That's what they think. And it doesn't work that way. The world and women don't give a shit about how nice you are. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. It's how competent you are. How can you
Yep.
execute?
Tear you to pieces.
James Allen said this in his As a Man Thinketh, which I highly recommend anybody read and read it over and over again because it's a short read and you can read it 100 times in a year.
Bro, I read a page or two from that book every single day for over 2 years
So
until
good.
it was mine.
Brilliant. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And one of the things he says in there is that weakness cannot exist in a power evolving universe. And that's what we're talking about. You can't, there's no place for you to be weak. And I think a lot of guys want to get to a place where they can be complacent, sit on the couch, and their kingdom's kind of running itself. And it's not how it works. It's like we think we get to these points, these checkpoints in this video game of life where, okay, I got the wife. Now that's good. I don't have to worry about that. And now I got some kids. I don't have to worry about that. And I got a job that's paying me. Now I don't have to worry about that. It's not how it works. Complacency is death. It is about constantly evolving and constantly leveling up. And it's the only way to find satisfaction and fulfillment in life. The happiest people in this world, the only happy people in this world, are the people that are leveling up. They're the people that are improving. They're developing. Progress equals fulfillment, which equals happiness. That's what it
Yes.
looks like, progress. And you can only progress if there's adversity. So everybody will say these things, and you hear like atheists, why would God allow suffering in a world? It's like, because suffering is the catalyst for everything. Like suffering is what makes life make sense. It's what makes this life have any meaning to it. It's what creates development and opportunity. Now, the problem with suffering is like in every scenario, there are two truths. There are a negative truth and there is a positive truth, and both of them are equally true. And this is what everybody has to understand. Something horrible happens to you, and you say, "That's terrible. That set me back. I didn't deserve that." Blah 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 blah. That's all true. You could say that's all true. Uh, but it makes you a victim. That's the outcome of it. It's going to make you a victim and it's going to make your life worse, and it will do nothing to level you up or make you better. Or
That's
on the
how I
other hand, you
started
could
my
say,
life, playing the victim.
and all of us have been there. I think almost every week we've learned this. Like but it's true. So that's the thing. People, and you can't argue with them about their truth because like, no, it is true. I am a victim. Da, 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 da,
Yep.
because it's
Yep.
true. What they're
Yep.
saying is true, and so they can stand on that and they can scream all day long about how wrong they were because X, Y, and Z happened to them, and it's true. Or you can say, this happened for me. There's something to learn in this. And now this gives me the opportunity to peel off stuff that I didn't need before and to execute better. And now this thing that was terrible in its inception is now becoming fuel for my progress and growth. It's this life lesson that whatever that looks like, no matter how horrific some of the suffering can be. Because you see this, you see people that have gone through the worst things life can throw at them and come out the other side of it better for it, a
So
lot
good.
better for it. And you see the same thing happen with people that go through the worst in life and they come out absolutely wrecked and destroyed. What is the difference there? And it's what truth you choose to believe. Both are equally true. Do you want to be a victim or do you want to be empowered? But you can't do both. And so you have to decide what truth are you listening to? What truth are you subscribing to? Which truth are you selling yourself on every single day? When something happens to you, is it happening to you or is it happening for you? And if it's happening to you, you're going to have a miserable, unhappy life. If it's happening for you, then all of this adversity and all this suffering means something. Another great book to read, everybody recommends it. It's one of the most important books I've ever read is Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep.
And
I've
that's
been thinking
exactly
about
what
that
Viktor
during this
Frankl talks about is
conversation.
like, you find meaning in your suffering. And when you find meaning in your suffering, you can suffer almost anything. You can suffer anything and you will come out of it better for it.
Yeah. And the power is this is so beautiful because it literally comes down to a choice. We get to choose, and we can take now, right now. Like I tell people, like you can't change destinations overnight, but you can change directions overnight. You can change directions right now. You can choose to believe that second truth. You can choose to give what happened a different meaning. And I can realize that the worst things that happened to me are the best things that happened for me.
That's so good.
I love this. Love it. Okay, anything else? Where can people connect with you and get what you're offering the world?
Man, come join the party. Adam Allred official on the social media platforms. And then we have Doughboy, a program we're launching in the next couple weeks. It's really just designed for guys to come together into a community, into an online virtual tribe where I host live 2-hour session trainings every single Sunday. We call them virtual campfires. We sit around the fire and we talk it up, cut it up, and share this stuff like what we're talking about right now. And there's a whole host of other things that we're doing with the programs. That's where I'm at. Come hang out with us. Come be part of the whole thing.
Beautiful. Love it, brother. Okay, any last message we didn't cover that you think, man, I got to share this. Something that you want men to hear that just is makes your soul sing.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would just close out with what you were saying at I think this is important in life. The only thing that you have control over ultimately, you can influence things, but you can't control anything. And but the only thing that you have control over is your attitude, your effort, and the direction that you're going. That's it. That's all you have control over. And so when you learn to control your attitude and you learn to control your effort and you start being more intentional and strategic about the direction you're moving in, it's what you have control over. And so
Works.
own that. Own it. Don't trade that for anything and don't give yourself an out. Don't give yourself an excuse. Don't be a victim. Own that that's your responsibility. That's it.
And like you said a moment ago, like ultimately at any moment, especially where most of the men listening are at and where you and I are at, at this point in our lives, we can either level off or level up. And nobody ever coasted to the top. And leveling off will not lead to happiness and the results you want, like you've already said so well. It's leveling up it's like I'm literally choosing to be happy and successful. I'm choosing to be the king in my kingdom and lead my family. And the only choice is to level up.
It is the only rational choice to life.
Yep.
Like, and when you can understand that nothing else is going to be rational or make sense, you have to just take your hits square on, man. Take your hits, have some pride in it. Don't quit. Get back up. Keep going. That's life. Stop wishing it was different. Stop trying to make life conform to your, very limited, very biased perspective. Just accept that this is what life is and then get to work orienting yourself towards it in the most constructive way possible. And that's the only rational approach to life. Otherwise,
Exactly.
everything else is going to be some form of hell.
Exactly. That's the best approach. I love it. Adam, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Greg, pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed the conversation.